Welcome everybody to our live stream. Does it feel like Friday? It isn't. We normally do live stream on Friday. It is Tuesday, and we're here from the Huckabee Theater. And the reason we are is because we are pre-taping this weekend's Huckabee show, doing it on Tuesday night instead of our normal Friday. The reason for that, Memorial Day holiday. So that way all of our staff will have the opportunity to be off with their families. Hopefully, we'll also be honoring our nation's veterans who have died in the service of our country and in the gifting of our freedom. Pam Case is with me today. She always is. She's the senior producer for the Huckabee Show, and she's going to be reading questions that you are going to be sending in, which I hope starts right now. Remember, we have moderators watching for your questions. If you want more visibility, send us a super chat. We've got a lot to cover today. We're going to be talking about a Clinton Foundation investigation that got shut down. Also, the approaching debt ceiling crisis. Isn't there always a crisis in Washington? And we'll talk about the NAACP's absolutely absurd Florida travel advisory. Plus, we've got more. And we like to kind of start with the pre-show poll. For those of you that are early, see, I'm always early for things, and I would have been one of those people already lined up and ready to go from the beginning, and I would have participated in the pre-show poll. So for those of you who do, you're really on my team. I like you. Pam, what pre-show poll do we have this week?
Right, a very engaging question, Governor, with over 300 votes before the show started. What language does Joe Biden speak? English, Spanish, Mandarin, or none of the above? Care to make a guess?
I'd go none of the above.
All right. Well, you are with the majority. 66% with none of the above. English, 25%. Spanish, 3%. And Mandarin, 6% in the pre-show poll today.
There you go.
Lots of fun.
Yeah. When you do hear Joe Biden speak, sometimes you just scratch your head and say, what is he saying?
Yes.
It's just sort of as a jumble of words. And it
has his own language, sort of.
Yeah, I did a tweet this week, and the basic thing, I picked one of his videos from a news conference, and it was unintelligible and incoherent. And my tweet was, wow, I didn't know Joe Biden was Pentecostal. Here he is speaking in tongues, but we don't have an interpreter to tell us what it was he was saying. So I think there was like 100,000 responses to that.
Yeah,
so
good. That's well
somebody
done.
Connected. Of course, there were some nasty people, but that's always the case.
That's okay.
We have a top comment from last week's live stream. It comes from David Pointer. He said, I quote, I believe the media should lose their license to be able to spread lies. Don't count on it, David. The media and the government are kind of all locked at the hip. And that's one of the big problems we face in this country. Now, we always have a question that we pose to you each week, and here it is for this week. Will you do anything on Memorial Day to honor those who have died serving our country? Love to get your responses and find out, is it something you've thought about? Because it really ought to be more than just, having a barbecue in the backyard. So send us your answer to that question. Will you be doing anything on Memorial Day to really recognize the purpose of the day? And by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with the backyard barbecues, the family trips, or any of that. In fact, maybe my view of that really was solidified when my wife and I were at Normandy, on the beaches of Normandy, and we wondered on this now pristine beach, did people have any sense of connection when they were out there sunning themselves and enjoying themselves to what happened on that beach in 1944. And one of the locals who had an uncle who died at Normandy made a comment I'll never forget. It was very powerful. He said, those men died so that people could enjoy this beach again. They would not want it to be left without people being able to enjoy it. That's why they stormed up this hill.
That's pretty profound.
I thought it was. I thought it was very powerful, and it reminded me that the purpose of their accomplishment was to create freedom and opportunity for people to live their lives. And in fact, as horrific as what happened on that beach, it was fitting that the day would come when people would simply go and enjoy a day at the beach.
Yeah. That's great. In fact, I think as folks are answering that question today, maybe they tell us if they are doing something special, let us know what you're doing or where you are, what event are you attending, or what is it where they are on Monday. I'd be interested to know that too.
I'm going to be at a veterans cemetery on Monday. Janet and I go. This particular time we're going to be with our family, and we're going to be away from our home. But there is a veteran cemetery near where we're going to be vacationing, and we will go there. We've been there many times in the past. But if we are in Little Rock, there is a service every Memorial Day at the Veterans Cemetery in North Little Rock, Arkansas, that we attend. But I can't imagine just saying, no, I'm not going to do it. And it doesn't matter, rain or shine. We feel like that's kind of a moral obligation, just to pay respects. So.
Well, and I love the scouting. What a lot of the scout troops do here in the Nashville area is they take flags and they take them out during these services. It happens over in the West Nashville area every year with scout troops putting a flag on every single gravesite.
That's great.
There at the cemetery. It's lovely.
Well, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, why don't you do it right now? What you got to do is just hit that subscribe button. You see it right in front of you. Just touch it. You've subscribed. Hit the notification bell. We'll let you know when we have fresh content loading. Be sure to like our page and share it. And the reason we ask you to do that is not some ego thing where, we want to be liked. It's because in order to reach the people that actually do want the content, we have to prove to YouTube that people want it. Well, the only way to do that is for people to have the like button pushed and the subscribe button. And that's called engagement in the social media parlance. And therefore, when you push those buttons, it ranks up there with greater levels of social engagement. So there we go. All right, we got a lot of ground to cover, some fascinating videos. But first thing we want to discuss is a story that popped out of the New York Times. So who knows if there's much truth to it. But this is a story that basically tells us that the Justice Department investigated the Clinton Foundation and all of its ties to some funny money from around the world where foreign governments were giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. And it just so happened that some of them had some business pending with the government when either Bill Clinton was president or Hillary was Secretary of State. And funny how they got many things they wanted. But you would think that would warrant an investigation. It did. Up until the time that someone may have found something, and amazingly, the whole thing got shut down, and all the evidence that they had collected was either destroyed or just simply got lost, maybe returned to the Clintons, who put it in their private server. I don't know. But I just find this so frustrating that there is a double standard of justice in this country, and that's a great reminder of it right there. Jim Jordan is the head of the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives. They're doing their own investigation, and just because maybe the FBI and the DOJ is finished with the Clinton Foundation, Jim Jordan makes it clear he may not be.
Not only did they investigate her like they did President Trump, they gave her campaign a defensive briefing. Right. They should have done the same for President Trump because they literally had no evidence. So we're going to talk with our lawyers. We're going to talk with Speaker McCarthy on where we proceed from here. In fact, are there people that were highlighted in the Durham investigation and the Durham report that we need to talk to on the Judiciary Committee? We're going to give that a good hard look. But nothing is off the table because it is critical the American people understand how their government, their agencies have been turned on them, the taxpayer.
Yeah, nothing is off the table, he says. Let's hope that's true. Kevin McCarthy has been really frustrated as Speaker of the House. The Oversight Committee, headed by James Comer of Kentucky, has been looking into this vast array of evidence that indicates that there was a family Biden enterprise in which, again, tens of, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars over time has been shuttled back and forth between foreign governments, including China and Ukraine, and the Biden family, all the way up to Joe himself. It borders on, if not explicitly, being bribery. And you would think that the FBI would want to say, hey, look, we'll cooperate with this investigation. Why wouldn't they? But they've not been too helpful. And in fact, James Comer has asked for specific records. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, has basically told him to pound sand. Kevin McCarthy, not too happy about it.
Congress has a right, and we have the jurisdiction to oversee the FBI. This is one piece of paper that a chairman of a committee has requested to see. He hasn't even acknowledged whether he has this document, but he hasn't even provided it. I explained to the director that we will do everything in our power, and we have the jurisdiction over the FBI, that we have the right to see this document. I believe after this call, we will get this document.
I certainly hope so. I'm just amazed that the director of the FBI thumbs his nose at a congressional oversight inquiry. Let's be very clear. People elected members of Congress. Nobody elected the FBI director. Nobody elected the people in the Department of Justice. The way our system of government works, just as a little civics reminder here, the highest level of power rests with those who were put there by the people through their vote. And everyone else, their power is secondary to that. And the people who are put there by the vote of the people have certain constitutional duties and responsibilities, one of which is they do have the right and responsibility of oversight of federal agencies, which means they can ask any doggone question they want to, and they have a right to get an answer. Now, it's one thing for Christopher Wray to stonewall me if I send him an email and say, hey, I'd like to see some records. And he may just tell me that I'm a talk show host these days and I don't have any right to see those records because I don't have standing. But you can't tell the chairman of the Oversight Committee that he doesn't have standing because he absolutely does. And these records need to be coughed up, and not with a bunch of excuses or redactions. They just need to be coughed up or we can kiss this country goodbye. It's pretty much that simple. Well, speaking of challenges, Joe Biden seems to be a little challenged about the debt ceiling. In talking to people from the press, you get the impression that even though he's supposed to be the one responsible for and dealing with the budget negotiations, the debt ceiling negotiations, he may not be that familiar. Watch.
This side of the equation, they came along and said initially, it's hard to determine where they are, quite frankly. And I don't know, you all may know more from questioning him than I do.
They know more than I do. He's the president. Even if that's true, I don't think it was probably wise for him to get up and announce that his staff and the people running around under him know a lot more about it than he does. Boy, that gives you confidence, doesn't it? Peter Doocy, Fox News reporter who covers the White House, is obviously not one of Joe Biden's favorite people in the White House press room. And he asked a very impolite question of Joe Biden as to whether Joe will get blamed if the debt ceiling debate goes south.
Mr. President, on the debt limit, you said already, I've done my part. Do you think that if there is a breach, nobody will blame you?
Of course, no one will blame me. I know you won't. You'll be saying Biden did a wonderful job. I know you.
Would you be blameless in a default situation?
On the merits, based on what I've offered, I would be blameless. On the politics of it, no one will be blameless.
There's one thing that Joe Biden is seeming to forget through all of this. Joe Biden had over 100 days to sit down with Kevin McCarthy and or any other Republicans and say, let's negotiate this debt ceiling. We see it. It's coming. It's coming soon. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's work this out. But he didn't. He didn't make a call. He didn't host a meeting. McCarthy made many appeals to meet with the president. The president ignored him until he comes back from this G7 meeting in Japan, and he says, oh, by the way, yeah, we got less than a week to get this resolved. We better meet. But here's a big fact that I hope hasn't been lost on you. It was several weeks ago when the House of Representatives passed a debt ceiling bill. Okay? They didn't just talk about it. They didn't even just put something on a piece of paper and say, this is a proposal. They passed a bill. So it's now voted upon. The Senate hasn't passed anything. They haven't even proposed anything. And the White House has not put on the table anything specific other than we want it our way. Only the House Republicans have actually done something. And yet they've been rebuffed at every turn by this White House. One of the things in the proposal of the Republicans is that some of the savings would come from no longer paying people to be on welfare who were able-bodied and who could work and who had no dependents, but basically were getting up at the crack of noon and enjoying some significant couch time. Kevin McCarthy says time for that to end.
When you talk about work requirements, remember, we want to take from people from poverty to jobs. We want to take, it's only for people who are able-bodied with no dependents. I don't think it's right that we borrow money from China to pay somebody that has no dependents, able-bodied, to sit on a couch. What we find is people become more productive.
So that's still a red line for you?
Every study has shown it helps the economy, helps people, and it helps our supply chain, make us less dependent upon China.
I'm just amazed. The reporter wanted to argue with McCarthy. It's like, no, we should have people sitting on the couch. We ought to borrow money from China and pay people who are doing absolutely nothing. I don't understand how anybody thinks that working Americans should be partly responsible to pay for those who do not work, who could. We're not talking about people who are physically incapacitated, nor people who have a dependent at home and maybe can't realistically go out and take a 40-hour-a-week job. Now, we're talking about somebody who could go to work, has no dependents at home. They just don't want to. They just don't want to, because playing video games, sitting on the couch, eating Cheetos is just more fun than going to work. Well, gee, a lot of us never thought of work as just something that was fun. It was something that we felt morally obligated to do to take care of ourselves and our families. And I think McCarthy is right, and I hope he sticks to his guns on this. Speaking of guns, there's a guy in Memphis, he's a Democrat congressman named Steve Cohen, one of the most vile people that ever got elected to the House of Representatives. He's absolutely a disgusting person, and he said just hateful things. I don't know if you remember, but he was the guy that brought in a bucket of chicken to the House committee and sat there and licked his fingers eating chicken one time. There's the picture of it. He's really a disgusting person. He once got onto Star Parker, who is an extraordinarily gifted and accomplished African-American female who once was on welfare and a dependent and on drugs and had an abortion, came to realize that was a dead-end life. She became a Christian believer. She got to work. She got a college degree. She started a program that is now making it possible for people to get off welfare, helping them to become productive. And he called her some of the most vile names in a committee meeting. And I thought, if any Republican ever said that to a woman in general and to an African-American woman in particular, they would have been drummed out of the Congress. Well, here's what this goon gas bag had to say this week about the Republicans. Watch this.
It's going to be difficult for President Biden to negotiate with somebody who has those type of legislative terrorists on their team, and the 14th Amendment is an ace in the hole.
No, it's not an ace in the hole, and I want to tell you something. It is not being a terrorist, as he describes Republicans, because they think there ought to be work requirements to be able to get a government check. Now, that's something people could weigh in on. They could send us what their thoughts on that. Do you think people who are able-bodied and have no dependents should still collect a check from you, the taxpayer, or should they have to go to work in order to get any government assistance? Let's see, we got some questions coming in.
All right, we had one from last week, and then it kind of continues into this week. Someone last week had asked us, and we had not talked about how can the FBI actually be changed? And then the suggestion this week, can we disband the FBI like we did Pinkerton? So comment on that about the FBI and what could be done.
Well, you can certainly disband the FBI, create something different or reform it. I'm not sure it can be reformed because of the level within its leadership that has so corrupted the agency and its reputation. This is sad because the rank and file agents across the country are good, decent law enforcement people. Many of them are appalled by what they see happening in an agency they've given their lives to. But the fish rots from the head down. And unfortunately, there's a lot of rot at the head of this institution now. and I'm not sure it can be salvaged. So Congress can make those changes, but Congress won't make those changes unless Republicans get the House, the Senate, and the White House. It's the only way it'll be reformed. And then we better have some courageous people in Congress and in the White House, or it will never get done.
A reminder to everybody watching today, our question of the day, will you do anything on Memorial Day to honor those who have died serving our country? And it's been great because a lot of folks are responding. Terry Jorgen says, I help at the Veterans Cemetery down the road, placing flags on the various graves of our honored soldiers that have died. And Will Fowler says, I will be honoring my nephew, Private First Class Joshua Lancaster, who died in Afghanistan. Which leads me to this question, Jacob Johnson asking you, what is a good way to honor the troops on Memorial Day?
It's a great question, Jacob. I think participate in some public ceremony. And the reason I say that is you can do it at home and you can certainly do something very privately. But at those ceremonies, my experience is that there are a lot of the Gold Star families who will be present. The presence of members of the public who don't have to be there says volumes to those Gold Star families. I've had people come up to me and said, you know, I'm so glad to see you here. It was like they were shocked, you know, that I attended the ceremony. And they know not a Gold Star family. Didn't do it because I had to be there. Didn't do it because I had a family member that I was honoring. I did it because I believe that my country deserved to see as many of us as possible show up at one of these Memorial Day services to honor those who couldn't be there. But it says something powerful to the families. So that's, I just think, an important way. Maybe there's a Memorial Day parade in your community, but most communities, or at least someone nearby, a community close to you, will have some type of ceremony. And you can go online and probably look and find it. If all else fails, go to your, make a call to your local VFW or American Legion. They typically are involved in helping to sponsor them, or your state veterans organizations, and ask what's available in my area. And if there's absolutely nothing within driving distance of you, well, maybe ask a few of your neighbors together in your front yard and just simply have a moment of silence, a prayer, and a salute to the flag. Just something I think is good.
Those are some great tips. Thank you. All right, this probably refers to, you mentioned Representative Steve Cohen from Memphis earlier. Highland Homestead is asking, why are these people in Congress?
Because they get elected. And the reason they get elected is because they have people in their districts who probably have no clue as to how worthless they are. And they get money because they're there. I really want to see term limits come. The only way you'll get rid of a guy like Steve Cohen or Hank Johnson down in Atlanta, who thinks Guam is going to tip over because you got 10,000 soldiers positioned there. Some of that's embarrassing. All right. But it never change unless we get different people in office.
All right. So Mr. Wright is asking, what do you think about taxing companies extra that are using AI that displaces workers?
Interesting question. I mean, you want to say, gee, if you're displacing workers, that's not good. Honestly, I just don't know of anyone, business or individual, who's not getting taxed enough. If anything, I think it's the waste of the money that we give in taxes that is a bigger issue for me. And I don't like what AI might do in terms of replacing, but let's be realistic. Technology is always in the process of replacing some things. The reason we don't have people who, make wagon wheels anymore is because the automobile industry got rid of the wagon industry. And the reason that maybe we don't have people who are doing, trying to think of some obsolete position now. My dad used to rebuild car generators. Well, cars don't have generators, and they haven't had for 50 years. So, I could complain, gee, my dad lost a lot of business when, cars quit having generators and went to alternators. But it was an improvement in the operation of the car, so you have to learn new skills. One thing I truly believe, there'll be some skills you cannot outsource, and AI can't do it. Try to get a Finnish carpenter, a brick mason, a plumber, an HVAC technician, an electrician. AI can't do that. Right. You got to have somebody with skills, a welder, a pipe fitter. These are good jobs. They pay well, and they should pay well. People work really, really hard to do them. And I hope we never stop respecting the people who do the work that really keeps us all going.
All right, so have to ask this. I want to find this. It relates a funny little thing from Ross Reed. He's saying, are we certain that old Joe isn't an underdeveloped AI and the real Sleepy Joe has been long gone?
Oh, wow. Ross Reed, that's a good one. I may count that as the comment of the week. That's a good one. I want to get to this Florida travel advisory because this is, honestly, it's one of the most insane things. You got the NCAA president, the NAACP, not the NCAA. Well, they're about as crazy as well. But the NAACP president is now telling African Americans, don't go to Florida because they don't like you down here, which is ridiculous. But I want you to listen to him. By the way, the chairman of their board lives in Florida.
We should not use race or othering as a tool to weaponize against people. And unfortunately, for a large percentage of the Floridians, that's what he has done. Therefore, we are advising African Americans and others that if you travel to Florida, beware that your life is not valued, that we have a political landscape that could cause harm as we prepare for the 2024 elections.
We're empty. Maybe he needs to put some books up there and read a few of them. If he did, he might find out that Florida is the #1 state in America for African Americans owning their own businesses. So if it's really that horrible a place, why is it like that? I cannot imagine. He also goes on to try to deny that is a fact. And it really makes him look, I think, foolish.
Has moved into the #1 spot in the United States for Black-owned businesses. What they are saying is, look, African Americans and Hispanics are doing quite well here when it comes to running their own businesses and being able to make money here and being able to live decent lives. How do you address that with this new ban?
First of all, that's propaganda language. Over the last several years, it wasn't because of anything he did in policy.
There you go. It's propaganda. Not that what he is saying isn't propaganda. It's utter propaganda. I just find that laughable. And last night I was on Hannity. My comment to Sean was this: don't respond in anger to these people because they will enjoy that. And don't try to reason with them because they're unreasonable. And don't try to rationalize with them because they're irrational. Ridicule them. It's the only way we really have to deal with these people. Ridicule them. Just push it back on them and say, that's stupid. And make fun of them because it's the only thing that honestly will do any good at all. And it probably won't do a lot of good. Pammy, remember last Friday we had some video of this young 18-year-old who was just randomly going into people's homes.
Yes. Walking
around. He ended up taking a lady's dog and kidnapping her dog, which I find just horrible. And he thought this was real funny, and he put a video of himself doing this on TikTok. Well, something happened. He got arrested. Let's watch this. I just have to say I did not shed a tear. I hope he spends quite a few nights in jail. And I'm glad he was doing this in Great Britain for the simple reason that people there can't arm themselves and protect their homes like we can here in the States. I was going to think, pal, try that down south. Just walk into somebody's house, walk around and steal their dog.
Yeah, wouldn't end well.
Buddy, you ain't going to be surrendering at the police station. There'll be a 911 call so that they'll know where to come and pick up your carcass, is what they'll find out. That is just absurd. Speaking of absurdity, we end today with a Democrat Nebraska state senator. This is not made up, and this is not a loop where we've just taken her voice over and over again. This is actually on the floor of the Nebraska Senate, And I want you to just watch for yourself how unhinged people can be, even when they get elected to something.
Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. You matter. You matter. And I am fighting for you. And I will not stop. I will not stop today. I will not stop tomorrow. You are loved. You matter. You belong here.
Gosh, all I can say is that this poor woman needs some help. She is so animated to the point of being, like get a putty knife, scrape her off the wall, all because she wants everyone in the trans world to know that it's the most wonderful thing in the world to be trans. And I'll bet you anything that woman is for abortion. So she's all about protecting men who think they're women or pretend they are, but she won't protect an unborn child. Help me understand that. I doubt you can. If you've been enjoying our live stream today, please subscribe to the channel. We have said this before, but we're getting closer and closer to 1 million subscribers. 1 million. And about 2 out of 3 of you watching right now, you haven't hit the subscribe button yet. And if you did, we would be at 1 million within days. That might crash YouTube.